What's up, everybody? Welcome to a new episode of Run It Back. And today we've got a really, really good one for you. A movie that we've been talking about doing, I believe, since last year. It is A League of Their Own, the 1992 movie about women's baseball, directed by Penny Marshall. As always, I'm your boy Prime, one half of the dynamic duo from the Sports Bar podcast on Facebook. And I got my boy Source. What up, dude?
What's up, bro? Yeah, we've been talking about doing this joint for a minute and figured since we are early in the baseball season, we might as well get into it. As we just did. We just did The Sandlot 2 weeks ago. So now we're doing this other joint that we have been talking about for the longest. And it's a shout out to the ladies as well. So cool.
Yeah, shout out last week, our last one a couple of weeks ago. You mentioned The Sandlot to Mark Cheatham from the Cheats Movement for joining us on that one, man. That was a whole lot of fun. And as I explained to him, we've got so much more on deck, and there's probably another baseball movie or two coming before football season hits. But I've been really, really wanting to get to this one, man. And I'm just so excited that we get a chance to go ahead and do this thing today, man. I've been really waiting on it.
Word, let's get into it.
All right, so the movie, it takes us back. Well, it was made back in 1992, and they did really well with this thing. Source, man, the budget was only about $40 million, and they made $132 million at the box office. So it got a lot of love for a lot of reasons, man. Do you remember seeing this movie when it first came out? Maybe at the movie theater, or did you catch it at home?
I definitely didn't see it in the movie theater. I don't even remember the first time I saw it. And actually, until just watching it to remember, the details of this one, watching it this week, I have never seen the very beginning of this movie. I think the first five to probably 8 minutes, I had never seen it. It may have been like 10 minutes. I have never seen the beginning of this movie. And I didn't realize it until, this week.
That's something we have in common because I didn't see this at the movie theater either. All right. I saw it on cable, I believe. I know I saw it on television. And until I went back and rewatched it for purposes of doing this podcast, I never remember the first 6-7 minutes of this movie. And which is crazy because the first 6 or 7 minutes of this movie are critical, like really to get the whole feeling of what this whole thing is about. And for me personally, it is one of those movies that I will admit that we talk about it all the time, that it happens to be on television. And no matter where it is, I may end up watching it from that point, till the end, knowing, till the end and knowing what's going to happen. But I would never really quite catch it at the very, very beginning. So that's crazy. And that's crazy. And you think, so the movie, it starts off, so it's supposed to be, I believe, in 1988, the part that we're talking about. 1988 when it starts. And of course, we see one of the, if not the main character, Dottie, and she's preparing to go to a reunion, celebration, dedication to Cooperstown for the women's baseball, All-American Girls Baseball League. And you can see she really is not all that pressed about going for a whole lot of reasons. And her daughter's really spurring her on, telling the mom, you need to go. They're going to miss you if you don't go. You need to get out of the house. And what we learn later in the movie, that she's been pretty much the same Dottie her entire life, So, but it was big, man. It was big. Fortunately, for the way this movie goes on and the way it ends up ending, that her daughter did kind of push her out of the house and told her that, Mom, you need to go.
Yeah, it's funny that we see her as the same person. And when it came to baseball, when it came to probably her marriage, probably even growing up, she was the exact same. And even though she loved it, it's like she didn't want to admit to anyone else that she loved it, regardless. And I feel like it's a lot of people, because they know, like, I have these responsibilities or these things I have to do over here, that this isn't important to anybody else, but I love it. But I can't let them know I love it. I have to just do what I have to do, as opposed to something that I want to do.
And that's key what you just said, because for something that we'll probably mention later on in this podcast, probably closer to the end, something that I noticed and I caught. But you were dead on about, what you were saying there. So after we see this at the beginning and she finally leaves to head to Cooperstown, it kind of takes us back to like the 1940s, like 1943, right? So we go back, 40 some years, and we see Dottie and her sister Kit playing, was it industrial league baseball, I guess you would call it. I guess I think it's what they called it when you had baseball teams that were kind of backed by companies, so they're playing in an industrial league baseball game. And of course, we automatically see how good Dottie is, and we see some of her younger sister's struggles. And a sister that you can tell that actually loved her big sister, but kind of resented her a lot because of a lot that was or wasn't going on in her life. And we meet Ernie, and Ernie comes along. And Ernie is a guy that's off the chain. Like he's been hired to go out and recruit some women across the country that can actually play baseball at a time, whereas some of baseball's players, especially a lot of the greats, have decided to go serve the country because we're in the middle of a war. So baseball is going to come to a stop. And they're trying to get to a point where there's at least some form of entertainment going on. So they come up, Candy Giant, Mr. Harvey, Candy Giant decides to get with some of the other owners and, to kind of bankroll this whole operation and get, some women's baseball going. And so one of the guys he hired was Ernie, I think it was Capadano or whatever, and he goes out to recruit him. He sees off the bat that, Dottie is that girl, and he's interested in possibly signing her, but not her sister. Recruiting her.
Yeah, and we know that if there was no Kit, there would not have been a Dottie leaving, because Dottie would have been like, nah, bro, I'm good, I'm stay here. And although she would have resented it, inside for her whole life, she wouldn't have left her family or job or her situation. She would have just sat in that and been like, it is what it is. But because Kit wanted to go so bad, and pretty much Kit couldn't go without Dottie because the recruiter did not want Kit, he wanted Dottie. So she did it, and what she seems to do a lot, she did it for her sister. But it also served a dual purpose, that she could use that as reason to do something that she really, really, really wanted to do inside anyway.
Yeah, and Dottie decides to go. I mean, we find out that Dottie is actually married, has a husband that's over, serving our country as well. But yeah, she does it for her sister. We fast forward a little bit. So when they decide to go, and what kills me, so they're leaving, they're in Oregon.
Right.
So that's a long ride. So they go from Oregon over to, when they meet, what's the girl's name? Was it Marla?
Marla.
So she was in, what did they go for her? Colorado. I think she was in Colorado, and they're playing, she's having her tryout or so her recruiting debut or whatever her dad arranges for her inside a gym. We find out they have it inside the gym because it's raining outside. And there's some guys from the local baseball team there, and the pitchers throwing their pitches. And we find out that honestly that old girl can kind of knock the cover off the ball. I mean, she break a window or two inside the gym and she can play. She can really hit that thing. But then of course, when your boy Ernie gets a real good look at her face up, he like, kind of looked at her mug a little bit. And it's like, man, I'll get back to you.
Yeah. Well, we still see, even today, when you look at women's sports or women's athletics, people tend to want to have the women be pretty or sexy or whatever the case may be, as opposed to just whatever woman is good at the sport. So that is a double standard that still exists today, and that was in the 40s, and this is almost 80 years later. Right now, we're still looking at the same thing on a lot of levels. Yo, Ernie was the worst though. He was a jerk. He was a jerk, and he knew he was a jerk, but he could get away with it. I'm surprised somebody punched him in the face. Very surprised.
I was thinking the same thing. Somebody draw back on it. But yeah, so what's crazy is, and it was kind of, the league ended up being kind of sexist, man. Like I understand the image they were trying to put on, but this was more at the beginning. It seemed like more having sports, but having a little, I don't know, a glamorous female edge to it. And we get there, they tell the ladies that there's gonna be no, they can't smoke, they can't drink, no men. We see this, the outfits, the uniforms you're gonna put on, and they got these little skirt like this. And the first thing I'm thinking, like, you gonna really have these women out here sliding, in the third base in a skirt, bro? Like, tear up somebody's legs, like which we did see later on.
Yeah, but they were looking at it, not the women, but the league, the owners. They were looking at the entertainment value of it, and like I said, we still see it today. If you think of what's the football joint when the women had the shorts on with the cutoff tops and the helmets in that joint, like it's the same thing. Again, 80 years later, same deal. But so we kind of had to expect that back then.
And we get to meet two other pivotal characters of this, two characters that I absolutely loved in this. We get to meet Doris, played by Rosie O'Donnell, and May, or should I say All the Way May, played by Madonna. And look, I'm gonna just go ahead and tell you off the bat, man. Like, I even got to get deep.
You used to love Madonna. Go ahead, say it. I know that's what you're about to say.
I like their music. I love their music.
Oh, okay.
Now, I was never in love with Madonna. You leave that to all the other gentlemen, and there's been quite a few. But
right
when I first saw this, of course, I mean, like a lot of people, Dottie was my absolute favorite character. I love the way she played. I love the Gina Davis's portrayal of her. But the more and more I saw this movie, I've seen this movie tons of times. I'm not gonna lie, man. All the Way May was my people, man. Like, first of all, you get Madonna to play this character. I mean, that was Madonna, man.
And that's like Madonna. That's like in the midst of all the hype and the fame, Madonna, and she was willing to accept a supporting role. So that's big on her. That was big on her, just for that.
And she was good. Like, she was really good in this role. It wasn't one of those things where you're just taking somebody that's popular and putting them in there just for, I don't know if there was any intentions or not, but because a lot of times we see that and it doesn't really turn out all that well in the acting department. She was really good, man. Like, and she earned that name All the Way May. Like,
on and off the field.
Yeah, one of my favorite parts is we see later, because we see her and Rosie's or Doris's relationship, and she's one of the parts when they were talking about trying to jazz things up to make the league more interesting and all that, so they wouldn't be shut down. And Doris and May says something about, what if I kind of flash and my bosom kind of fall out, and Rosie was like, you mean there's people, and what she says, you mean there's somebody in America who hasn't seen your bosoms? Something like that. That was gold, man. Absolutely. That was gold.
It's a few of those one-liners that Rosie, that Doris gets in there that are hilarious to me.
Yeah. Also, remember when they were at the house, and I guess they were talking about going out, seeking out, whatever. And the girl, and May comes out with that dress on, and it's kind of tight. And they was like, the dress is kind of tight. And she says, I don't plan on having it on very long.
Yeah, that's when she was getting ready to go on a date.
Yeah,
that's when she was getting ready to go on a date, when right before the trade information came out.
Man, it's gold. A shout out to Madonna, man. Like, this is the real Madonna. But she played the guy thing, and we can go over the history, man. We know in real life the Dennis Rodmans and the Tupacs and
Sean Penn,
Vanilla Ice. People say, but she played this part. I don't know if she was playing this, but she played this part. So shout out to Madonna, being more than just a filler. She was really good in this movie, and Rosie and Rosie was too.
Yeah,
Doris, and I like the ride they take us on with Doris, because did you get the feeling that in this movie that she was still kind of trying to figure herself out? Like, absolutely. Because, you look at it, in one part, she talks about her boyfriend back home and he treats her mean and all that. but then you see how awkward she acts when men kind of show her some attention in this movie. You know, it's just like, I like the way they played it.
Yeah, she wasn't used to the attention from anybody, let alone men, I would say.
Yeah.
And even her dad, it seemed like, because it was such a big deal that her dad actually came to the last game that they played in that first season.
And that was big. I think people missed that part, man. I think they really missed that part, just the genuineness. And people can say, well, a lot of people have, you know, deep relationships with their parents or father or mother, but I don't think they really got the dynamic of what they were trying to portray in this movie. You hit it dead on. Tom Hanks, man. Tom Hanks, which you know, and I've stated several times in the Sports Bar podcast group, for me personally, and I know everybody get to throw in the Denzels and everybody up, but for me personally, he has to be in the running for the greatest actor ever. I'm not saying he is, and I'm not saying this is his best part, because it's not, but he was absolutely hilarious in this movie, man, and really good.
Absolutely, he was great. He was great in this movie, and I'm on the Tom Hanks for GOAT, or at least top 5. You know, I'm on that bandwagon. My man Phil Bailey will see this and be like, Daniel Day-Lewis. You know, that's his guy. So, and some people, you know, Pacino, De Niro, and like you said, Denzel.
Sure. You got to be on the list.
And there's a few more in there as well, but I'm with the Tom Hanks. I cannot argue that statement, because he plays any role in any movie, and he's always great regardless of the role he's playing.
Yeah, and you know, his character was loosely based off of a Jimmy Fox, former Red Sox first baseman. Was a kid that years ago that for a longest time held the record as being the youngest to achieve 500 homers. Also was I think it was 3-time MVP. So it's loosely based off of his character.
Thought you were gonna say also was a drunk.
I don't know about that. I do know. I did find out something interesting though that I did not know. Did you know that? So Jimmy Fox actually, after his playing career, so he did end up coaching for the Peach. He was coaching. He coached another team. I can't remember the exact name of the team, but they lost to the actual Peaches in a playoff game.
So they went ahead and combined stories for the best storyline. Yeah, I mean, movies.
It was like the Fort Wayne Daisies or something like that. Very interesting. So, you know, so this whole movie it's fictional, but it has a lot of, you know, interpretations, representations, you know, through some actual events that happened, you know, along with the, you know, the women at the All-American Girls Baseball League. I do want to give a shout out, though. I got to give a shout out. To me, one of my favorite and one of the best sports nicknames ever for me, even though it really wasn't based on sports. Man, but how could you not love the name Betty Spaghetti? Come on, dog. Betty Spaghetti, I thought was so dope. And to me, I could look at her and somebody could tell me that, you know, shout out to Tracy Reiner, who played that part. If somebody was to tell me her name was Betty Spaghetti, I can look at her and believe it. I think that was great.
Did you look back at the supporting characters, not even supporting characters that were really, you know, speaking roles, but that the other people that are in the movie? Like I was just looking back. I actually hadn't paid attention to it until my last watching of the movie. And at the very beginning, when they're in line, when the ladies are in line and at the baseball tryouts, I was like, is that Tia Leone? It was Tia Leone, Madam Secretary.
I didn't know.
And she played Julie in the first Bad Boys.
Uh-huh.
She was the first baseman for the Racine team. the team that Kit played for. She ended up playing first base. I was like, was that her? And then I looked later and saw her playing first base. So I was like, wow. But she's the only supporting, like other than the obvious. She was the only supporting actress or actor that I saw that I was like, yo, I still see her. Her and Bill Pullman, who was Dottie's husband.
Yeah, and shout out to that guy. He's been in
a lot of stuff.
Some pretty decent, like, movies over the year. One thing though about Tracy, you know who her parents are, right? Though Betty Spaghetti, where Tracy Rayner. You know who her parents are in real life?
Carl? I don't know.
Shocking. A lot of people don't know. So her mother is actually Penny Marshall, who actually directed this film. We know, of course, Laverne from Laverne and Shirley. It's her most popular role, I should say. A lot of people don't know she went on to do some other things like, Jumping Jack Flash. Penny Marshall did quite a few movies. But her father is Rob Reiner, who was Mike on All in the Family.
Rob, so that's Carl's son, right?
Yeah. So very interesting. A lot of people didn't know that. So they cast her in this movie. I thought she was really good too. Had to feel for when he found out that her husband was actually killed serving the country. That was a kind of, of a down moment in that, but it was touching.
I mean, you got her, you got Gary Marshall.
Gary was in there. Huh?
He was Mr. Harvey.
Mm-hmm.
I saw another, I can't think of what the last name was. It was another character, and I saw their real last name, and I was like, they gotta be related because the last name was odd. I can't remember what it was though. I might have to look it up real quick.
Yeah, so they kept the family dynamic, but it all worked. I mean, it really, really all worked in this one. But in this movie, man, I just think that the acting was really good. I think it was really good all the way across the board. My man Ira, the guy that Ira Lowenstein, Ira, I love this character. He developed a genuine love for the game, and he meant he was going to do everything he could to try to keep it going. That news when Walter Harvey comes down to try to tell him that we're going to, the war is going to be over soon or whatever. There's no need to keep this thing going. The look on Ira's face was priceless. Like, what do you mean? You gave me something to do. I turned this thing into, to something that's, all of a sudden a hit. We might be making a little bit of money now. What do you mean we're going to shut this thing down? Just want to shout him out as well. I mean, he was really good.
Yeah, and I think more than the money, way more than the money. He, like you said, he cared about the league, and he cared about the women. I think he cared about the players because they had given up their lives thinking that they were getting a chance to do something that they normally wouldn't be able to do. They wouldn't be allowed to do, or there wasn't anywhere to do it, like on a major scale. So I think he definitely saw that and was like, I can't let all of them down. And plus they're gonna look at me anyway. They're gonna look at me. They're not gonna look at you. You're the money guy. I'm the guy that has them out here and is out here with them on a regular basis. So I think that had an effect as well.
And why your boy, so why coach Student do a girl like that don't cry in baseball, man? Like, that's one of the most memorable quotes in the movies today, man. Like, well, why you do it like that, man?
Yeah, and that's still a quote that you'll hear regularly.
Mm-hmm.
Cusack,
yeah,
which was Shirley Baker, and she got to be related to John. Yeah, gotta be. But yeah, there's no crying in baseball is one of those moments that, I mean, we hear people say that on a regular basis, in whatever situation. There's no crying. You say there's no crying in baseball, of course.
Well, I've never had a coach tell me that, but I can relate to that a little bit because I think I told you before, I used to play in the outfield when I was younger, and I always wanted to bypass the cutoff man. And look, I was a little skinny kid, man. I really couldn't throw the ball that far. So they moved me in just a little bit closer, second base, shortstop. So But I could kind of relate to that scene. But I thought that was crazy. But her son, though, man, the Stillwell Angel, dude, is off the chain, man. Like, first of all, how you gonna let that dude run up and down the bus like that?
Everybody get it.
Yo, and May was ready to kill him, dog. May was ready to kill him.
She chased that man around the bus on the side of the road. What a bad. Like, I ain't got no kids, but I don't have no problem killing yours.
You know what? Probably the best thing that happened to, his mom, though, and the reason with him being able to be there, if this had probably been I don't want to use the word sane, but a coach that at the time had himself together and was like at the time really serious about baseball, he'd be like, man, ain't no way you bringing no kids on here. This what do you mean? Well, I don't get, and she would probably never been a part of the team anymore. Like, we're not bringing the kid. But of course, coach hadn't got himself together yet. I mean, he's still drinking. He really wasn't giving a darn about the job for real. He just wanted to get that paycheck. And it was like, yeah, all right, yeah, whatever,
He's just getting, so let me get enough money to be able to drink today, and I'm good.
Oh, it was crazy, man. But the one thing I knew, I can remember the first time I saw this movie, I knew we were going to be in for something, a tearjerker maybe, or something that was kind of heartfelt, because they kept harping on, we watched these women grow close together, and, not only at the house where they were staying, but those bus trips, those bus rides,
mm-hmm.
The things that they shared on the bus, especially when May is back there helping old girl to read, and she's reading her some old steamy romance novel. Come on, man.
Hey, what's the important thing is she's reading. That's all that really matters.
Yeah, so right when I started to see all that, I knew, I said, yeah, something's gonna happen at the end. Somebody gonna die, someone pass away. I knew. But the way they showed the harmony and the players growing together was awesome in this one.
Yeah, that's real life though. That's real life. You think about whether it's middle school, high school, college, and then even into the pros, those relationships. And I think about AAA and AA and that type of stuff. Like, you are together all the time, especially when you get to the pro level, you're together all the time. So those relationships are built. And that's really what this was. Like, this could have been all men, it could have been a movie with all men, but the fact that it was all women, and that was one of the selling points, was a big deal.
So the part when Kit actually gets traded, there's no way they're going to trade Dottie. Dottie goes up there and asks, I'm leaving. Well, you got to tomorrow to trade me, and kind of puts Ira and them behind the gun. And but Kit gets traded instead. And first of all, he wasn't going to trade her away from that team. Of course, he was like, "No, forget that. I'm not. This is possibly, and we hear often in this movie, the best player in the league. I'm keeping her here." But Kit did tell us, "Look, I'll see you in the World Series," and she ends up seeing her in the World Series.
Yeah, when you look back, we were talking before about Dottie being giving and putting everybody else's wants, I guess, in front of hers. She was quitting because her sister was having a hard time with her being on the same team, and her being the big sister was kind of like, all right, if this is what it takes to make my little sister happy, then that's what we got to do. But she also made it clear that the game is the game. Like, when they were on the mound before she got traded, and she had a hard time, when Kit had a hard time at the end of that game that put them into the playoffs, Jimmy asked her what she thought. And at first she was like, she tried to just say whatever so she could be out of it and it wouldn't be on her. But when he asked her the second time, she was like, this is what it is in regards to the sport. She's struggling.
Yeah.
Get her up out of here. And that shows that she had the love for the game, even though she still had the love for her sister and wanted to protect her sister, which we saw again at the end of the movie.
It was deep, man. Like, the whole thing was deep. The whole thing was deep. And so she gets traded. So when she gets traded, and all of this is still around about the time that we see that actually that Dottie's husband comes home. She doesn't know that he's coming home. And this was kind of a common theme, I guess, probably back then in real life, because we saw Marla, who was, we mentioned was really good hitter. She actually got a man early, and she meets while she was singing out on the Girls Not on the Town. And I mean, how many was it? Was it a few weeks? They get married, like, and she just leaves. I'll be back next year. Like
Marla had never seen a man that had looked at her the way Nelson looked at her in life. I'm guaranteeing it.
And that was probably the first time anybody was attracted to her. And that was probably definitely the first time anybody was attracted to him. So it was like that was a match made in heaven,
I didn't even think about that part.
Yeah. I mean, that's real. So, but yeah, so Dottie ends up leaving. Like Dottie, they find out they're headed out to again. They find out that Dottie is, her husband's home. She's ready to go. Part because it's what she's always been about, or what she stood for, or at least have you believe that she didn't care about the game that much. It was, she liked it, but it was more something to do. I made the moves, and she's thinking in her mind probably, okay, well, everything is kind of worked out. My sister got to play baseball. We're not on the greatest terms right now, but it is what it is. I'm going home. And she's about to leave. So your boy's about to embark on to go try to win this series without him.
And that speaks again to her putting everybody's needs or expectations ahead of hers, because who's leaving? Like, we thought it was a big deal that Vince Carter went to UNC to his graduation on the day of a playoff game, or the day before a playoff game. Mm-hmm. It was the day before the playoff game. And they made a huge deal about that. This lady's leaving the team, period, because her husband came home, and she's going home before the World Series gets started.
Not just any game, not the World Series.
The World Series, the championship. That's what we played the whole season for. He come home, it's like, oh yeah, well, and again, this is 1940s, so it's always catered to the man from the jump. So of course she's like, well, he's here, and that's all that matters. And now I'm going home.
Awesome point. And something we didn't mention, which is not big, but since you brought that up, you're talking about catering to the man. Do you remember early in the movie when they, this is way before they left, they were back home on the farm with their parents, and the mother's telling them to quiet down because father couldn't hear the game?
Yeah, he was listening to the radio.
Yeah, he getting radio or whatever. Well, I assume it was a game. He listened to the radio. Like you're right. It's all about catering to the man, the husband.
Kid was like, I can't stay here, bro. Like,
I got to go.
It can't be my life. And then when they were in the club, and she's around the girls in the club, and that guy pays attention to her, she actually tells Dottie, thank you. And that thank you was pretty much for, thank you for getting me out of Oregon. Thank you for getting me in here, for real.
It's crazy that was Oregon, though, because I really wouldn't have thought of, which shows you the culture of baseball and how dynamic it is and how important it is everywhere. Because if you would have told me that this movie would have started out, it's about baseball and it starts out in Oregon, I'd have been like, Oregon?
Why? Why are we in Oregon?
Like, I mean, we New York, Chicago, but Oregon, but so I gave you Cali, but Oregon. What? So.
Oh, one other point I want to mention. It's a small point in the movie, but it was a big deal. It's a big deal because this movie was like deep. This movie was actually very deep if you really pay attention to it. When the lady, I think it was before a game, and the ladies are warming up, the ball rolls over, and a young Black woman picks up the ball, and Geena Davis' character is like, throw it to me. She's the closest, and of course she expects the woman to not be able to throw that well, and she launches that joint dead back to the pitcher on the other end.
Yeah,
and gives the heads up and all that. I take that as Penny Marshall giving a tip of the cap to Black women who could play the game as well and who weren't allowed, I would bet, weren't allowed to even be in the league.
Yeah, shout out to Penny Marshall, man. May she rest in peace. Of course, we know we lost her, I believe, back in 2018. But in the midst of all her directing and her acting, which she was fabulous as an actor. She was a avid baseball fan, loved baseball. So this was right. This, a lot about this movie probably really hit home for her. Yeah. And it's also known too, so that she was not as loud, or maybe things were a little bit different back then, but she also was an activist too. Yeah. For rights of all people. So shout out to Penny Marshall for sure, and everything that she's done, especially with this movie. But so when they get to the World Series, man, and of course we know what happens, that they go on and the Peaches are down. They're playing, of course, against the Bells, and then the Peaches are down, and they make that comeback to get back into the series, and then Dottie just happens to show back up, right? In your mind, the way they played that, why do you think she showed back up?
I think that she wanted to play, and she finally, like, I don't know if it was her stating it to her husband, or her husband being like, I know you still want to play, because her husband seemed like an understanding kind of guy, right? So I would probably lean more towards the husband opening the door to it being okay for her to go back, and her saying, yo, I want to play, and then them just happened to get back at that time, as opposed to waiting to see what would happen. Or you know what? Maybe she did wait until, because I can't remember, did they win the 6th game? I can't remember if they were up 3-2 or down 3-2. Because if they were down 3-2, I got to think that she just happened to show up that before game 7. But if they were up, I could see her being like, we're up still. If we win it in this next game, and I wasn't there, then it's their thing. They won it. But if I can go back, if they lose, I can go back and maybe I can help them win it, get over the top. I didn't really think about that, but hope that kind of answered the question.
Yeah, I think they did what they did on purpose. They wanted to leave your mind open if you get as deep as I do on this, because it could have been so many things. Mm-hmm. One, it could have been a competitive spirit of, I'm going to play my sister. Even though I've gotten her there and the whole 9 yards, it's still, it's a sister, we grew up together. I may not admit it all the time, but there's still that competitive spirit inside of me. Number 2, I kind of do love the game as much as I, even though I tell people I don't, and I know that I'm not coming back after this, so maybe one last time, or which I tend to believe that it was the husband, because I think from the way they portrayed his character, I truly believe that he would have been fine with her playing baseball as long as she wanted to. It's more so her that mentioned that I'm going to start a family and I want to do this and I just want to be home with my husband. He seemed like the type of guy that if she played for another 5, 6, 7 years, he'd have been fine with it.
Agreed.
He would have supported her. But before we tail off into the game, I do want to ask you though, what were your feelings on the dynamic between Coach Dugan and Dottie?
That's a great question. I think that Dottie didn't want. I think that she knows that she could have been the manager, mm-hmm. And she knows that she knew the game. She knew that she understood where everybody needed to be, all that, but she wasn't gonna push her way into that role. But when the coach didn't step up and do his job, somebody got to step in and do it. And I know I can do it, so I'm gonna just take this role and lead the team. I hope you're talking about baseball. Like, you're not talking about an attraction. Okay. So, and I also think that in the moment where Marla is going up to bat and Dottie is given the signal for her to suicide, I think it was suicide squeeze. I think that she knew that he was watching and he was aware enough to see her doing that and know there ain't no reason for this to be going on. And it fed into his ego because he's already like, obviously, these women don't know baseball like I know it anyway.
Yeah.
And they ain't real baseball players. What is she talking about? She don't know what she's doing. Let me get up here and show her what it's supposed to be. Then it works out and it kind of catapults him into stepping into his actual role and lets her fall back into still a leader of the team and still just as important, but got him to do his job.
I think it's so much there. I think one, I wonder, did she do that on purpose? That hoping that at some point that he's going to snap out of it and really go ahead and coach the team. Like, you know what, I'm going to keep on doing this. I may even call something that's not really logical. Mm-hmm. Maybe he'll step in, right? But I think with that, it was more so her being the type of person she was, like the helping person. She helped her sister get into the league. She was kind of like the big sister for just, the girls on the team. Mm-hmm. She stepped in when she needed to. And I think she saw a troubled gentleman, troubled man that she felt could be so much better. And she helped pull him out of that, True. To some point. I do think that over time, though, she was attracted to it to an extent. I mean, I think she was that, she had that big of a heart that her trying to help him, when they're on the bus and they're waiting for I guess what you call it, the team mother or whatever to fall asleep. And he was like, pass me a drink. And he thinks he's about to get a shot of that liquor. You know what I'm saying? And she opens up a soda, and, from there asking about his life, it's, laugh at his jokes when he's asked about his kids and, the other kids young. He says, well, one up, he says, whenever, what do you say, you had the kids or something like that. She says one up, but he's joking. I just think that her wanting to really help him, that was just the instinct in her. And you can kind of take that to a point where her wanted to be a mother. She wanted to be that motherly figure. How many times are we hearing this, how she wants to have kids? That was just her. She was the big sister. All their lives, for kid. That was just, now she can help somebody else. So I think her wanting to help him did kind of garner an attraction to him. And you could tell that through the whole dynamic, he was kind of attracted to her to an extent. That's something that, I don't want to say fate got in the way or things, just the way things went, but there was an attraction there, between the two of them. And also too, I think a small part to me that's big that really snaps this whole relationship between them is when they're playing in the game and he gets her, he's got some of that chewing tobacco or whatever, and he offers her some and they cut away from it. And it was like, she ain't gonna take that. The next thing you know, they come back to a little bit later, she's got some and she spits. And then they're sitting right beside each other, just like they were on the bus, and they're really getting along. That whole dynamic was great.
Yeah, I take that as a respect thing. Like, you really are a ball player, and you really could lead this team. And back to her, I think that she, like you pretty much explained it, she was a caretaker. So she was going to take care of whoever came into her path.
And also too, right at the end when she meets, he meets her husband. There's a quick awkwardness there.
Awkward silence, yeah.
Yeah, and he also did say he's a fan of his. As well. There was something there, and I think more so for him, it wasn't just the fact. It was a big part, as you mentioned, of course, that man, she can, she can really play. She can do a lot of things. She's just that good. But also, he probably felt too, well, this is somebody who actually was taking the time with me, trying to make me a better manager and person. And that. So when they got in the World Series, though, so when we getting towards the end of the game and the game is on the line, man. And first of all, how would you like to be anybody, much less her sister, to have the game on the line at some point and you have to face Dottie when she's up to bat?
Yeah, that's something. I mean, nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. That's like, and I think Larry Jordan versus Michael Jordan, but you know, MJ always says his brother was better, which obviously is not true, but it was his big brother. But I think it'd be like that. That would have been Larry Jordan on the mound trying to pitch to Michael. And with the game on the line, that's what made, I mean, just that part of the movie from, you know, the ninth inning, just the whole ninth inning tells the story of the movie in 5 minutes. Because at the beginning, you know, we see Dottie, what was that? You know, she was a single. Oh, not only was it a single, it was a shot right back at her sister, which spoke back to the competitiveness of her. And then, oh, you're gonna see me in the World Series? You're gonna see me in the World? Okay. All right, well, take this. Yeah, I love that. And it brought in the first 2 runs of the game for them and gave them the lead at the end of the game.
And I believe it was Doris and May were on base, right?
Yep.
Yeah, Doris and May were both on base, and they ended up coming in. And this was great. Like, this whole thing is great. Like, you know, she's looking at her sister like, you know, here we go. And Kit was really trying to beat her, you know. Kit, like, that would have set the whole thing off for her pretty much her whole life, everything she's been through, just that moment. But so we know what happens. They end up, the game ends up, you know.
Tell the story, man. No, I ain't gonna skip. You can't skip through this part. You got to.
What part am I skipping?
After she gives up the hit and they get the last out, you see Kit in the dugout.
Oh, I was gonna get to that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was gonna get to that. Yeah, so we pretty knows what happened. You know, and Kit, she's in there and she's crying. We see her, she's crying uncontrollably. We see her, and Dottie notices. She looks over to the other dugout, and she notices it.
Why do you think she was crying though?
She just felt like, you know, here we go again. Like, you know, I can never escape this. This is my life. You know, exactly. And this has got the best of me. Again, and this is it.
And I let my team down. So I'm losing the game, losing to my sister, and she always beats me. And this is where I am. This is what it is. Yep.
This is probably my last chance. I'm probably never going to get this again.
Yep.
Like, this is it. This is how my life is going to be. I'm never going to forget this. But when she gets up to bat, though, this is what I want to ask you. She gets up to bat, and Doris notices that, you know, she's batting, and she walks over to the mound and she tells the pitcher, says, look, you know, throw him high. You know, she likes to know high. Was it high and outside, or she likes him high with
those? High and hard. She can't lay off him and she can't hit him.
Right. What was Dottie really thinking?
We are going to win this game.
Was she?
That when at what point of the game, at what point in this movie did we ever see Kit hit anything that was high and hard?
Well, that was my thought. That was my thought probably the first billion times I saw this movie. Right? But could that have been a factor that she had just kind of given in, and after seeing her sister crying, like knowing that, look, her best chance of actually hitting a ball is going to be if it's high. I know she misses she loves to swing at those high balls. You see what I'm saying? She loves to swing at those high balls. But if I'm putting them high, at least I know she is going to swing the bat. Could that have been a dynamic in this?
I mean, anything's possible. I don't think so personally. I think that her competitiveness was speaking out, and she was going for the win. I don't think she was setting her sister up to do anything.
Well, I would have thought that too, and I still probably think that, but it's just a question, you know, that we'll never get answered, but really makes you think about this, because we know how this thing ends. She gets the hit, she starts rounding the bases, and even though they're telling her to stop at third, she's fit, and you know, the adrenaline, everything is pumping. Like, this is my shot. Forget that. I'm going for it. She rounds third, and we know the throw comes in. Dottie gets the throw, meets her at the plate, and Kit bowls into her sister, and we all know what happens. They fall down. They slow everything down. They both fall down and hit the ground, and the ball rolls out of Dottie's hand. Could that have been on purpose?
100%. I shouldn't say 100%. To me, 100% yes. There's no chance that she's driving it, in my opinion. But I can see how anybody could look at it and be like, did she do it on purpose? I don't know. She was running full speed and she ended up having the ball in her bare hand, even though she catches the ball in her bare hand. When somebody throws it at her, she, it slipped out. It could happen. It's possible. And if you want to believe that, if you like Kit and you want to believe that, I think that you can sell it to yourself to be like, she didn't drop it on purpose. I did that, or Kit did that. Me? Nah, bro. That was the big sister. That was the big sister saying, all right, I gave you all my competitive fire. I got the hit. I directed the pitcher to throw the ball where I know you don't normally hit it. So I've done my competitive part, and you stepped up to the plate and actually connected on one of them joints. And here we are. Fine. This is your moment.
But that's why I'm saying the more and more I think about it, when I was talking about, did she think that her sister could actually really hit the ball when she told her to throw it high? Like, did she do that on purpose? I mean, if you're going to give up the ball, if you're going to drop the ball at the end of the game, this was just like a minute before then. You go into the plate and tell them to throw them high. What changed in just a matter of a minute?
Well, I don't know what could have changed in a matter of a minute, but I think that Kit met the challenge. So Dottie didn't give her anything up to that point. She met the challenge. She challenged her. She had her beat. She got the hit. Then she had her beat with the pitches because I know she can't hit them. She actually hit it. She's like, oh, wow. She actually stepped up. Instead of blaming me, she stepped up, met the challenge, and here we are. So that's why I'm like, I can understand if somebody doesn't believe that she dropped it on purpose. I could more believe that she didn't drop it on purpose than I could that she was throwing it high so she could possibly hit it.
Well, one thing we didn't mention in this movie, do you remember just early in the movie that a girl, a little bit bigger in stature, not a big girl, but bigger in stature than Kit, did the exact same thing to Dottie, and Dottie held on to the ball.
Held on to the ball. Exactly.
Held on to the ball. So then we know what happens then, of course. The Bills, they end up winning the World Series, and we hear the crowd starting to yell, Kit, 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 Kit. And you look at Dottie's face, Dottie's okay with it.
Yes.
Dottie's fine. My sister's finally gotten this, she's okay with it. Let's move on. Pivotal moment, though, as I mentioned earlier, towards the end of this, because we see the part where right at the end, and they're in the locker room, the Peaches locker room, and almost all the girls have already left to go to the bus to leave. Dottie, of course, she's still not Dottie. Doris is still, she's feeling, she's really down. I thought we had it, and she's walking out, and there's nobody left in there, of course, but May and Dottie. And May was just like, it's okay, it's okay, it's not your fault. You're trying hard, whatever. This is great. Of course, they're saying all this, not really knowing that Dottie's not coming back, but.
Right.
And she goes to she sits there. So when she finally exits the locker room and she's on her way out, she's taking her time coming out, and she runs into Kit. And Kit's getting set to leave too. Before they really have their moment, something makes me think of something you mentioned earlier about how much that she probably really did like the game. She goes and buys one of those little pennants, those little pennant flags or whatever of the team. For someone who always talked about they really didn't love the game is all that much, and would probably, they had a conversation about her missing the game and all that, she did go buy that pennant. So there was something there.
Yeah, I felt like
she didn't actually buy it. Dude gave it to her, but she asked how much it was. But, yeah.
I feel like that was I think at that moment she knew she wasn't coming back, and that was her piece of memorabilia from that time that she was taking with her. That's what I thought.
Another thing, so towards the end, we saw, of course, Doris sees her dad. She's gonna get the steak dinner and all that. He threw in a quick jab to May. He couldn't let that go.
Yeah, of course. Like, hey, get you off that pole.
That was great. Small dynamic here, though. Did you notice it? The end of the movie told us a lot what we already knew about both characters, but it put the ice on everything. When the two sisters are getting on the separate buses, we see Kit get on her bus, and of course they share their little childhood, nag mule, you're talking to each other. You see how quick Kit gets on that bus, right? Doris takes a second before she actually gets on the bus. It tells you everything. Kit is rolling with, my life has been pretty much what it was the whole year, all my life now. I've got validation. I'm happy. I'm ready to get on with the next thing, Other end, Dottie's, she's happy. She's satisfied, but she's kind of taking it all in for a minute. Again, knowing this is it. She already told her sister she's not coming back. They want to have kids and so on and so forth. That scene right there just tells you everything about both characters. One gets on the bus immediately, one takes a quick second until her sister's on the bus.
And it kind of points back to when they first got on the bus, when Ernie was waiting for them and they were chasing the bus. Because Donnie's at the bus first and she does all the work. She throws all the luggage in there. She could have easily gotten on the bus and said, come on. Nope, she held on because she was looking out for her sister, made sure her sister got on the bus, and then she got on after her. So I think that was a look back, a shout back to that, again, her personality, caretaker, and she watched her sister. And her sister's, she's getting on the bus to celebrate and to be celebrated. So she's watching her sister get into that moment, and she's taking it in as you said, as the big sister, the caretaker, and the person knowing it's their last game.
Yeah, and of course, we had found out in the conversation just before then that, of course, Kit's already told her, some of the girls are thinking about staying around. I'm going to stay here. I like it here. Pretty much saying, hell no, I'm not going back to Oregon, dog. I'm not going back to that farm, Plus, though, she's also realizing too, I'm happy now, but my sister's carried me. I really got to do something on my own. Because she mentions, no, because when Dottie tells her, we're about to drive back, you're welcome to come with us. She tells her, no, you two need to be alone. Like, you've got somebody. I've had you all my life. Now you have somebody. You need to go ahead and handle that. I need to get out here and do me. I'm happy now. I do realize that you've carried me to an extent. They don't say that, but that's what it's supposed to be. Yeah. And it's time to move on, and she's happy with it. So.
What? One other point that was around that same time, right before that, when after Kit finished signing the autographs and they were talking, when Dottie says, I love you to Kit is surprised.
Yeah.
Like, it's like the moment she's been waiting for, because she said, you do, while they're hugging.
Yeah.
So she felt that, I guess, like she had lived up to her sister's expectations, or, she got the respect from her sister. Of course, her sister loved her the whole time, but to hear her say it, and in that moment, I felt like it was a big deal for her.
Yeah. And then we kind of get reminded right at the end of the movie that was a flashback. We kind of, it's one of those movies that get you because you get so tied into what's going on. You don't realize, you forget that this is a flashback you've been watching the entire movie. Right. So they're back in '88, and we see, of course, that, an older Dottie has, she's there. And they're about to go into the new addition to the Baseball Hall of Fame, honoring, the Women's Baseball League. And she runs into a whole lot of the girls that she played with in the league. Most of them were on her team. And we get to see, they did a great job, man. They did a great job. I love how they let, Ira actually cut cut the actual ribbon itself because he kept the league going, which we find out that went on for several years after,
11 years.
you know, after what we got to see, even though, you know, Dottie only played the 1 year. But I thought that was great. And the pictures and some of the photos were, I think it was some great photos on the wall.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of my favorite lines, which I didn't even realize was from this movie, was if it wasn't hard, everyone would do it.
Yeah.
And that's what Jimmy tells Dottie, I believe, at some point in the movie. When, I guess before, when Dottie said it was getting hard, the game was getting hard. It was all getting too hard.
Yes.
And he says that. So I think that's a dope line. And I didn't realize it came from this movie, though.
Yeah. So, and we get to see a lot of stuff. Like, so we talked about we knew we were in for maybe some touching moments and some tears. We found out that, you know, certain people have passed away, you know, when the ladies are, you know, later on, they were meeting each other and they talked about since her husband passed away, this, that, and the third. We saw inside the exhibit that Coach Dugan, he had passed away, Mr. 58 homers in a year. We didn't mention his classic line for this movie anyway. We told the two little boys, he wrote on the autograph, avoid the clap. You know, he's passed on. But it was touching, man. And all the way up until the point where we see Dottie and Kit see each other again. And you can tell it's been a while. And you can also tell that they hadn't really kept a whole lot in touch. It seems to me that I don't think that they just didn't talk. I think it was more or less that it might have been that relationship, whereas I might only talk to you a couple of times a year on the holiday, but we haven't seen each other. You know, I didn't come visit you, you didn't come visit me, we got our own lives. But they were overjoyed to see each other, and I thought that was great. I teared up a little bit, I ain't gonna lie.
Great ending, that was a great ending.
And touching, man, your boy Stillwell Angel. Yeah, you know, talking about his mom passed away and, you know, showing his face and the emotion that he was trying to hold in, looking at her picture. So everything about this movie to me was well played. was well played. So great. So look, what you think, man? 5 beer scale. What you giving this movie?
5 beer scale. I am actually giving this movie a 4.5. 4.5 beers, 4.5 Leinenkugel Summer Shandy, 4.5 Heineken's, 4.5 Chick-fil-A lemonades.
You and I don't often agree, but we agree on this one to the T, to the bottom, I should say. The mix might be a little different, you know. I'm just probably gonna roll with I don't know, 3 Michelobs on that, and you know that, and I don't know, a Devil's Backbone and a half, you know, but Vienna. But yes, it's 4.5 beers for me. I've mentioned so many times everything I liked about this movie. I can't really pinpoint anything that I didn't like. Again, for the 85th time in this podcast, May was my people. Madonna is, to me, was just as good in this movie as she was in a lot of her music. She just nailed it. They could have got anybody to play the part that she played, but I don't know if they would have played it as well. Just anybody, you know, you just couldn't just throw anybody in it. I mentioned I thought the Betty Spaghetti was cool. You know how I feel about Tom Hanks, everything. And then just being a baseball fan, period. Loving anything baseball. It's just, everything about this movie is just right. It's just one of those movies that no matter how many times I see it, I still get the same emotion all the way down to the very end of it, and when it actually goes off. So that's 4.5.
My last thing I'll say is really not related to the movie. Well, it's related to the movie, but the fact that even today, women, I mean, obviously equality is a joke. Like we know that there's not equal. As men, we know that we have advantage over women, the same as white people have advantage over people of color, generally speaking. The fact that women generally make 70 cents to the dollar that men make today is like the
Yes.
dumbest thing that seems like it can never be fixed. Like it seems like no matter what happens, we can never get to the point where equality is really a thing. And we kind of talked about it earlier, how sexist, and it was definitely sexist. It was sexist, racist. It was all those things, but it was what it was at the time. And this movie showed that time, well, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and we don't know, even back then, we don't know. I mean, I understand it was the 40s, and we don't know what the men professionally were making, and I can understand the dynamics for it. But they did mention in this movie they were getting $75 a week for making it to the pros. And remember, they was like, what was it? It was a kid saying it was better than making 45 a week.
30. It was 30.
35. Yeah, so a week. And I understand the whole dynamic of it, of this and how it's got to be paid and the interest and all that. But I would be interesting to go back and look up to see how much that the men were making. But yeah, it's still an issue we're having today as well. And all that. So, but we hope y'all enjoyed this. I really enjoyed. I'm glad that we finally got to it. A League of Their Own. I won't say if you haven't seen it, check it out. It's hard to me to fathom if you're a sports fan, even though a non-sports fan, that you haven't seen this movie at least one time. If it's nothing else, just for the star power of it. But yeah, we would hope that you would go ahead and do it, man, and get at us, leave us some comments on it. Also, if you haven't joined yet, please join the Facebook page, The Sports Bar Podcast. We call it the SBP. We have a lot of fun there for all of your sports, your hip hop, television, your movie needs, and all that. We drink a few beers, we eat a few chicken wings, we do it all. So please join us, and if you're on YouTube, click the follow button. We new there, but we're gonna get those numbers up.
For sure. I am me. At Smitty Source on Instagram and Twitter. You can holler at me on both of those. And of course, like Prime said, join the Facebook group, Sports Bar Podcast.
Yep, and you can catch me on Twitter and Instagram at Prime SBK. And always remember, there's no crime in baseball.
He's right, except during this movie.